What is your story about having a horrible gut feeling about a person or situation that turned out to be dead on? So, playing designated driver. I'm at a stoplight. When it turns green, my gut says nope, we are cool right here. So 3 drunks in the back, and 1 up front, all explaining that I should have let them drive, what the green light means, how to operate the long vertical pedal, etc. All very helpful. Just as I shrug and shake it off, a black Camaro with its lights off shoots through the red light, loses control and crashes into a telephone pole. Would have T-boned me 100%. The drunks are all in awe of my psychic power. Then the Camaro, flames shooting out from under the crushed hood, backed up and drove off. Super surreal. My best friend's family was visiting. Best friend and her dad had asked to see the new fossils I'd added to my collection, so I went upstairs to get them. Her dad was allergic to my guinea pig, who lived in my room. As I turned the corner I noticed my younger brother, who I call Sean online, was wearing his pajamas. It was barely 9 PM. Sean never went to bed that early. I asked him why he changed. Sean told me that he felt really sick and Dad had told him to go to bed and see if he felt better in the morning. Sean didn't look that sick, but something just felt off. I asked if Mom knew Sean didn't feel good. He said no, he'd just talked to Dad. That wasn't okay. And not because Mom would have been upset if nobody told her Sean didn't feel good. It felt more serious than that. Mom had to know Sean was sick. I started to flip out and snapped at Sean that he should never trust Dad's medical advice. Dad just tells people to sleep earlier and exercise more. Sean needed to tell Mom. Now, Sean very clearly thought I was overreacting. Heck, I thought I might be overreacting. But he went downstairs and told Mom he didn't feel good. First thing Mom did, as per usual, was check him for ashes. He had a red streak running from his thumb up to his armpit. Sean had severe blood poisoning. We found out later from the hospital he was 4 hours away from death. If I hadn't had such a strong feeling that Sean had to tell Mom he didn't feel good, he wouldn't be alive today. He'd have died in his sleep that night. There was knock on the shared front door. The house was broken into 3 flats. I was the ground floor. I recognized the guy at the door as the boyfriend of the pretty little Asian woman who lived a couple of floors above us, and he smiled at me and asked if he could come in and wait for her in the hallway. Nice looking white guy, very upper middle class with a tweed jacket and posh accent. Good manners, winning smile. My stomach did a flip, and I said no and shut the door in his face very abruptly. I had no idea why I reacted as badly as I did, because I knew him to say hi to, and I knew he spent the night in the building a lot. A couple of days later I see her with her face swollen and purple where he had beaten her to a pulp. Apparently she had been in a hospital for a few days. She stopped me in the hallway and said if I ever saw the boyfriend again I was to call the police. I'm guessing I subconsciously picked up on some non-verbal cue from when I saw them together. My sister had a boyfriend 10 years older than her. I didn't have a problem with the age gap, even though the fact that he had his first child when my sister was 13 kinda weirded me out. Age doesn't matter as much when you're adults, right? They weren't dating long, but she intentionally got pregnant 6 months into the relationship. I was really excited to meet him during a family trip, seeing as he's the father of my niece. Upon meeting him, I got a strange vibe from him and found myself anxious at the idea of being alone with him. He didn't do or say anything strange though, and generally seemed like a nice guy. Still, when it was just me and him, I felt incredibly tense, like he would try to rape me at any moment. I stayed at my sister's place for a few days, then went home in the next province over. He added me on Facebook, and then I got a message saying he thought I was super cute and he wanted to get together. He literally tried to cheat on my sister with me. He tried to cheat on my sister who was 6 months pregnant. I didn't reply. I just screen capped the message and sent it to my sister and my mom, asking my mom to look out for my sister since her boyfriend is a puddle of grease. After some issues, my sister is now a single mother. Few weeks before graduation, visiting my best friend at her school. We were outside some dumpy college bar and this tall, good-looking, athletic guy starts talking to us. Right off the bat I hate him. I just have this awful feeling about him immediately. Something about him is slimy, dishonest, trying too hard. My friend, who's seeing someone else at the time, nevertheless seems charmed. I have a terrible habit of being quick to judge strangers, so she probably didn't think twice about my bad-mouthing after he walked off. And anyway, graduation is a few weeks away, we'll never see this guy again. Fast forward a year, my friend moved to my city and we share a house together. It had been our plan since childhood. Things were great. Eventually, her relationship ends, and literally within a week, the guy from the college bar, let's call him Chad, sends her flowers and a cookie cake, just being a nice guy after her breakup. I think this is creepy and overreaching, and chock full of ulterior motives, and I tell her as much, but she thinks it's sweet, and they eventually begin to date, though he lives 4 hours away. I try to get to know Chad when he comes to visit, but he's aloof, kind of too cool for me, and not really interested in anything other than my friend. He stays over a lot, and does weird things like show up with his whole family, again, from 4 hours away, unannounced. Friend doesn't want to hear my concerns about Chad. She thinks I'm judgmental and trying to control her dating life. Maybe I was, but I couldn't stand this man. Ali ends. Chad moves to town to live with my friend. She and I don't hang out as much and never see each other unless Chad is around. When I called and invited her to my birthday dinner, she insisted that Chad come too, and when I told her I didn't want that, it's not like Chad would have even enjoyed an all-girls dinner on my birthday. All lines of communication broke down. It was very clear she chose him over our friendship, and I gave up trying to be involved. My friend and I didn't speak for over a year. She and Chad lived a few blocks from me, and I never saw either of them. I would drive by their house once in a while to make sure everything seemed okay, but I could never tell. She worked 4 jobs, pulling crazy hours, while Chad worked part-time, if at all. From what I know, he spent most of his time fishing on a boat that my friend tried to convince me that he had bought, not her. She slowly withdrew from all social circles that weren't directly related to him. Deleted most social media. It made me sick, and I worried all the time about her. I knew he was controlling who she saw, what she did, who her friends were, not to mention taking advantage of her finances, and it made me sick to think he was abusing her in other ways. After a few years, she left. He had continually threatened to beat her, and she finally had had enough. It was hard, and I still feel a lot of guilt for not having tried harder to make her see what I saw about Chad, or at least to maintain communication. But luckily, over the last year or so, we have been able to rekindle a friendship, which started when we were kids, and I've been able to be there for her when she needs me. I'm just so happy it didn't last for longer, as they were continually talking of getting married. I fucking hate that guy. I gave birth in November to a baby girl who had a very rare neurological disorder. She hardly moved at all in utero, but when I told my doctors, they all said that every pregnancy/baby is different, etc. I have a healthy son, so I tried to put my worries to bed. We had a completely normal pregnancy, totally normal tests, no indication of trouble. Then she was born. The second she opened her eyes for the first time, I got a horrible, sinking feeling in my gut. There was no there behind her eyes. We were still in the delivery room. There were pictures taken, and in every one, I look wary, scared. There were immediate problems. She didn't latch, she had no reflexes, etc. 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 I shoved all my worries down. She was born a few weeks early. Everyone kept saying, bottle feed her, and she'll perk up once she gets closer to her due date. Every nurse, every doctor, every lactation consultant. We were released from the hospital with a healthy baby. Nope, nope, nope. A week later, we were back in the NICU because she was still lethargic. She wasn't eating. It turns out she was basically brain dead the entire time. I didn't want to know, but I knew. I knew the moment I looked in her eyes. ETA. The diagnosis was Atara syndrome, a catastrophic and fatal epilepsy disorder of infancy. No family history of seizures. A complete surprise, medically speaking. We took her home from the NICU, and she passed away in our arms at 16 days old. My ex. She would constantly tell me things that seemed like they could be true with just enough details to make them believable, but were also just a little bit exaggerated, so it made her seem like her role in the story was more important or more unique. It always felt a little off, but she always had the benefit of plausible deniability on her side. Example, one morning I was waking up for work, and she told me there was a huge screaming match at the neighbor's house, where the two parents were fighting and making a scene. Her role in it was that she took their kids elsewhere while it was going on to keep them out of harm's way. The police were called, and the man was escorted off to jail. Since I hadn't heard any of this going on, she just told me, yeah, you were out like a rock, which was quite possible, but it was all a fabrication, just for her to have a story that made her seem interesting and important. Turns out she was a pathological liar and almost none of those things were true at all. My gut knew, but my brain reasoned the sense out of me. There was actually a girl I grew up with who was loosely a part of my greater social circle who always kinda creeped me out. I'd actually brought this up with some closer male friends and they seemed to agree. If you ask me to say why, I really can't even explain it. She was a bit ditzy, but very friendly and just overall nice. Never said a bad thing about anyone, or found herself in any drama, but it was just like she was almost missing some human component. Anyways, we lost touch after high school, but a few years after that she had a kid, and a few years after that she got sent to prison 4 years for basically doing that Munchausen by proxy thing. She was poisoning her kid and the doctors caught on, I guess. Luckily the kid lived and is with the father, who by all measures is a decent guy. I've told this story before, and it's really frustrating because I really can't articulate anything specific about her that gave me the creeps, but there it is. Years ago I was in another state due to a family member being hospitalized. The hospital was very close to a sketchy rundown area in my family, and I had stopped to get gas. This guy in a hoodie walks up while I'm pumping gas looking kinda out of it and hits me up for coffee money. I had a very bad feeling about him, and so not wanting to piss him off I carefully gave him a bit of change I had in my pocket, explaining I wasn't carrying any cash on me, all the while watching him and all around to make sure I could scoot/do something if necessary. He thanked me and went on his way. A few days later and back home I saw his face on the news. He was arrested for killing a bunch of women and ditching the bodies in the nearby abandoned houses. My sister-in-law was a high-level exec in a company. She introduced me to her boss, the seer. At that moment I knew they were having an affair. Nothing outward, strictly intuition. She was married to my wife's brother, and when I told my wife she said I was nuts. Within months we learned I was right. She divorced and went on to marry